What's up everybody and welcome to another video. So, Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. The culmination of this saga. 8 films before this. Comes down to this. It was released a couple days ago and I saw it twice. Wow! I'm just gonna rip it off like a band-aid right now at the start. I thought it was terrible. I thought technically and creatively it was dysfunctional from the foundation. It's writing. The writing was just bad. I'm going to briefly talk about the pacing and the characters and then talk about what I really think bogged this film down terribly, which were the stakes and the consequences, or rather lack thereof. So before we really get into the meatballs, the meat and what's the phrase? The meat. I think it's just the meat. Before we get into it, spoilers. This is a spoiler review. First of all, the pacing of this film. Wow. It was bad. There were way too many 45-second to 1-minute scenes. Either that didn't allow the audience to explore the emotion from that scene enough, or scenes that should have just been cut out of the film. The one scene that I can point to that I really felt needed more was General Hux's death. I really would have liked to see Kylo Ren's reaction to finding out that General Hux, essentially his rival this entire trilogy, was finding out that he was the mole. Or even better yet, I would have loved to see how Kylo Ren would have dealt with Hux. Alive Hux. And then there were a lot of unnecessary scenes that, as I said, should have been cut out. The first one that comes to mind is when it cuts from the festival on that sand planet to the Resistance base, and then one of the pilots says to Leia, "The Falcon's not responding," and then they tried this really ham-fisted joke about him not being optimistic enough, and then it cuts back to the festival and you're like, what was the use of that scene? The only important line that I can think of that we got out of that scene, at least I think it was in that scene, was when Leia says, "This mission is too important." And I'm like, yeah, we know. I thought we had established the stakes already. Emperor Palpatine has returned. They need the Wayfinder so that they can go to Exegol and defeat him. And then there was also that scene where Kylo Ren, right after his helmet was rebuilt, he tried to pull a Darth Vader in A New Hope, but took it way overboard. He flung the dude up to the ceiling and then said something like, "We will crush anybody who stands in our way," something like that. And I'm like, yeah, we know. I thought we established this in the first scene where you were massacring all these people, Kylo Ren. Why do you need to say this again? This is just a little nitpick, but there are way too many wipe transitions. I feel like the wipe transition is really iconic to Star Wars. That's how we get from one scene to the next. There were way too many because there were way too many 1-minute scenes. It was just wipe after the other. Like, what? Give me a rest. Okay, moving on to the characters. I feel like after this film was officially the trilogy of useless characters. Wow, there were a lot of characters in this film that were given a speaking role that I'm like, who are you? I don't know who you are, so I'm not like, this is just from the audience perspective. If you don't know who a character is and they just have one line, you don't really care what they have to say. These characters were just given throwaway lines. Like, just give these lines to the main characters, or the characters that we at least know. And then there are obviously a lot of characters throughout the entire trilogy that were given a lot of screen time that really had no effect or change the plot in any way. Rose in the last film, Pippin in this one. I don't know what his character's name was. I just recognize him as Pippin from The Lord of the Rings. Snoke, Supreme Leader Snoke. Suri, I think that's what her name was in this film. Honestly, I'm even going to go far as to say Chewbacca was useless this entire trilogy. Ugh. There was also, I felt like, some inconsistency in Poe Dameron's character. Poe is not an asshole. Sure, he's hot-headed. Sure, he's impulsive. He's a high-flying ace pilot, you know. But he was just straight up bullying C-3PO in this. Everybody kind of was bullying C-3PO. Is this what Rian Johnson meant by killing the past? You beat them with verbal abuse? Especially a lot of it came from Poe, and I'm like, dude, Poe's not an asshole. First film, he was great. The second one, they did him dirty. And this third one, they just made him an asshole. Oh. I did, however, one good thing I can say is that I did like the playful banter. I thought it was very alive in this film between the main trio. A lot of these characters also have no growth. I can point to one in particular, the main one, Rey. Yeah, no growth. She was powerful from the start. Obviously, it took her a while, but within the first film, it showed how powerful she was. And you're like, what? I'm still really bothered that she was able to best Kylo Ren, a Force user who has been training with a lightsaber and the Force since he was a child, in the first film. Rey kind of had a lot of power moments in this, where she was just like channeling a lot of power, I guess. And none of them felt earned, because she has not grown as a character since the first one. Okay. Finn had a pretty cool arc from being a stormtrooper, being told to shoot civilians, and then going to a general of the resistance, fighting the people who he once served. Pretty cool. Poe Dameron, also not a lot of growth. First one, he didn't really change as a character in the first one. In the second one, they treated him like a child. And then in this one, he was an asshole the whole time, until suddenly he got a pep talk from Lando. Leia died, and he was forced to take on the role of a general. And then he like referenced the little speech that Suri gave him. Of all the characters in this trilogy, Kylo Ren was my favorite by far. He had the most growth, he had the most conflict, he had to overcome the most, especially internally. He had the whole redemption arc, and he had the most satisfying end, where he became the Jedi. He died as the Jedi he was always meant to be. All right, now on to the big one. This film was really lacking in stakes and consequences. Or rather, there were stakes and there were consequences, but none of them meant anything. And none of them affected the story or the characters, because they were all magically flipped around. The biggest gripe that I have with this film is all the fake deaths. Deaths of really important characters, in not just in films, but in trilogies like this, are meant to either motivate the other characters, the characters that are still alive, into accomplishing their goal, or plunge them into, let's say, a dark night of the soul beat, and then eventually motivate them to achieve their goal in honor of the fallen character. None of that was really present, except for, I guess, Leia. But everything else was like, you're dead? Never mind, you're still alive. The first instance of this was Chewbacca. Now this one really upset me. I wasn't actually upset that he died. I was upset that he was still alive. Because, okay, let's break it down. The stakes of keeping him alive is that he's a valuable team member and a valuable asset for Disney to sell toys, but that's besides the point. And then the consequences of him dying was that the whole team is demoralized and the audience is sad because they lost a really loved character. Great, that's fine. He dies, and so the team is demoralized and the audience is sad, but then, like, not even 5 minutes later, he's alive. Now this one upset me because it had the potential to drive Rey's internal conflict more between the dark side persuading her that she belongs on the dark side, and her trying to fight to be on the light side and fighting to be good. This could have been used as like, you killed Chewbacca, you belong on the dark side. And furthermore, it could have drove external conflict between the team members. Remember when Poe was upset at Rey for just training in the forest instead of being up there flying with them on missions? He could have said something like, you spent all of that time training in the forest, not being with us, just to kill Chewbacca. Something nasty like that, right? That would break the team apart. Because remember, how do you make it seem like a team is unprepared to face an insurmountable challenge? You break them apart first.
That pits the Avengers against somebody who's more powerful than anyone they faced, and yet make them completely unprepared to face him. Well, tear them apart. which is why we did Civil War before Infinity War.
Absolute freaking legend right there. Okay, moving on to Kylo Ren. He gets bipped twice. The first time is when Rey freaking stabs him with his own lightsaber. That was pretty intense, and I was like, damn, I didn't think they were actually gonna do that, but they did. Big ups. What were the stakes of that fight, forcing Rey to kill him? Well, we don't want to lose Rey. She's the main character. She's the Jedi. She's supposed to defeat Palpatine. Okay, that's fine. And what are the consequences of his death? Well, nothing really, right? I mean, wasn't that the whole conflict? This entire trilogy, Rey versus Kylo Ren. One of them is going to win, the other one is going to lose, right? Isn't this what we waited for? The big showdown where one of them finally wins and one of them loses? Well, whatever. It doesn't matter. Because like 10 seconds later, Rey reses him. Kylo Ren calls for a revive. For some reason, I actually really don't know why. Like, I'm assuming she felt Leia die. Because Leia, I don't know. Well, it doesn't really matter. Because Kylo Ren dies again. Later, during the fight between Palpatine. So what are the stakes of this one then? The stakes are that Rey needs his help now to defeat Palpatine. And what are the consequences of him dying this time? Well, now Rey has to try and defeat Palpatine on her own. And so we think he dies. And Rey has to face Palpatine on her own. And she ends up defeating him on his own. So that completely negates the consequence of Kylo Ren's death. But again, none of that matters, because after the big showdown, Kylo Ren just comes out of the hole, just crawls out, just climbs out, and he's alive. And then a little minor one was C-3PO losing his memory. Obviously, it's not a death, but still, it's kind of like a character reset, I guess. So what were the stakes of this one? He's the only one who has the knowledge of where the Wayfinder is. And what are the consequences of this? He loses his memory, obviously. So boom. It's not a very big consequence, I guess, because he's still going to be alive and they can all just reintroduce themselves. But it still forces the team to make a hard decision, right? Nope, because later on in the film, R2-D2 just plugs his hard drive into his backup hard drive into C-3PO, and then he has his memory back. Okay. And remember when they were discussing C-3PO having to lose his memory to translate the message? Poe Dameron asks him, I think it was Poe, asks if R2-D2 keeps backups of his memory. And C-3PO was like, what? You can't trust that droid. Obviously you can. Because you got your memory back, 3PO, whatever. It doesn't matter. Okay, so now just a little bit more on the writing. I felt like it was too on the nose. The first rule, or at least one of the first rules that they teach you when you want to do creative writing, is that show, don't tell. They did a lot of telling in this film and not a lot of showing. Namely, during the reveal that General Hux was the mole, he shoots the 3 stormtroopers, they turn around, and then he goes, I'm the spy. And I'm like, dude, you killed the 3 stormtroopers. I think we can tell you're the spy. There was also a lot of plot convenience in this film. Oh my god, the plot convenience. Suri, like I said earlier, was just pure plot convenience. And then, Finn just guessing that the command ship was the one sending out the nav signal. Like, they were given no hint that that command ship was the one sending the signal, or that the signal was transferred to there. He just looked up and was like, I've got a feeling. And I'm like, dude, that's not a feeling. That's called plot convenience. Also, when Kylo Ren just shows up to Exegol right as they're doing the Sith ritual. Ooh, I'm not even gonna get into that ritual. I don't have the strength. I guess we can assume that from the debris of the Death Star, there was a surviving, fully operational TIE fighter that was undamaged and that could get him fast enough to Exegol that he caught that ritual right on time. Yeah, and now the biggest problem of this, not just this film, this entire trilogy, Rey is a Palpatine. Honestly, couldn't even say that with a straight face. Rey is a Palpatine? What? That came out of nowhere. Yeah, that came out of nowhere because it was ham-fisted in. This is the entire trilogy. Everything that they have been building up to this for this sequel trilogy. This is the reveal that Rey is a Palpatine. Boom! That's what happened. This also really upset me because much like the Chewbacca death, there was wasted potential. Wouldn't it have just been better if Rey really was a nobody, like they said in the second film? Would it not have just been better? Because then the message of the entire trilogy is that whether or not you are a Jedi or a Sith, and how much power you have, is not determined by your name or your lineage or whatever link to power to a powerful Force user you may have. It lies in your heart and your spirit. That sounds kind of cringe, but it's true. It's not about whether you're a Skywalker or a Palpatine, or even there were some theories that Rey's a Kenobi. It's not about that. And then obviously a consequence to this ham-fisted twist is that it felt like nothing was earned, like I said earlier. Right at the end, all of a sudden, Rey like channels the Avatar state, and you're like, where did this come from? Like, it was hinted at the beginning of the film that she was trying to access the power and hear all the voices of all the Jedi that came before her, the Avatar state. But that was it. That was like the only mention of it the entire film, the entire trilogy. Do you know why at the end of Avengers Endgame, when Tony says, "And I am Iron Man," snaps, saves the whole universe, but gives his life? Do you know why that was so earned? Because his character had such a clear growth and arc from the first Iron Man to Endgame, and every film he was in between. That's why it felt earned, because he grew as a character. He learned that giving his life for the ones that he loves was the most important thing to him. I don't know why Rey was able to channel the Jedi Avatar state. I don't even know why Palpatine was able to channel the Sith Avatar state. Do you also know why in Avengers Endgame, why the portal scene is so powerful? When every character and every faction from this universe shows up to reinforce Captain America, who's about to face Thanos' army all on his own. Do you know why that felt so earned? There were clear wins, losses, stakes, and real consequences throughout the entire thing, the entire journey. None of that was in this film or this trilogy. That's why when the reinforcements show up to Exegol, it doesn't hit the same way. That Avengers Endgame portal shit hits different, yo. And going back to the Avatar state thing, again, would it not have been better if Rey was a nobody, yet because of her heart, her spirit, her determination, her wanting to do good and to fight for the light side for the right reasons, wouldn't that have been more satisfying than if she channeled the Avatar state as a nobody, but a nobody who wants to do good? That would have been so much more satisfying. That would have been so much more rewarding, because again, the message wouldn't be that your power doesn't come from your name or your lineage, it's from what's in here. Man, that's about it, guys. I can't do this anymore. I'm legit depressed right now because I wanted this to be good. I can't say anymore. This is too much. That's it for the video. If you liked it, like it. If you want to say something in response to my critique or otherwise, do so. Comments, that's what the comments are for. I want to give a special shout out, say thank you to my patrons on Patreon for your donations. Thank you so much. And finally, if you want to support me, subscribe and see more content like this. Other than that, I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye!